As a landscape painter who loves fantasy, I've searched long and hard to find artwork that showcases the vast, epic landscapes of the Cosmere from my favorite fantasy books by author Brandon Sanderson. While there is a plethora of amazing character art, I couldn't find many focusing specifically on the landscapes, so I decided to create my own. The city of Urithiru is the first of many Cosmere paintings I plan to create. At the end of the video, I'll share some of the other landscapes I have planned. This painting took 8 months for me to plan and create. Designing my first fantasy painting pushed me to discover how to achieve realism in a fantasy landscape. To help accomplish this, I chose to focus on 2 things: creating a realistic representation of the city and believable, engaging light and shadows throughout the painting. I challenged myself to look outside the box and create my own reference material. I sculpted a clay model of Urithiru to better understand the form of the city and to see firsthand what it would look like from different angles and under various lighting situations. Though by no means a perfect model, it helped me figure out the lighting, the shadows, and the overall composition of the painting. I fashioned a 3D mock-up of the entire scene on my kitchen table, with makeshift mountains made from cardboard and paper towel pieces to simulate clouds. By moving light around the scene, I could find interesting arrangements of light and shadow. In my opinion, captivating light is often what separates a good painting from an exceptional painting. The most dramatic light is cast onto the city to encourage the viewer's eye to be drawn there first, then hopefully to linger for a while before exploring the rest of the painting. At the basic level, a painting captures a moment in time, but it is my belief that a great painting also tells a compelling story. I carefully crafted each element of my painting to help tell the story I envision when reading the descriptions of Urithiru in the books. The city is nestled at the top of a vast mountain range, safe above the high storm, yet under a peaceful night sky. Yet a storm rages below, as a reminder that though the city stands above the storm, a very real danger remains within reach. The clouds span out into the distance like an ocean, obstructing any possible view of the world below. This setting suggests the feeling of isolation from the rest of the world and aids in the illusion of the inaccessibility of the city. In the books, the location of Urithiru had been lost long enough for the city to fade into myth and legend before being found once again. I intentionally painted the sky free of any clouds to provide a clear, peaceful view of the stars. I did this for 2 important reasons: to create a contrast to the imposing high storm, and to bring greater attention to one of the focal points in my painting, a cluster of mysterious red stars. This red constellation is known throughout the Cosmere universe under different names, can be seen from multiple planets, and has been referenced in more than one of Brandon Sanderson's books. It is known by many names, including the Red Rip or the Star Belt, but the people of this world, the planet of Roshar, call it Taln Scar. Not much is known yet about this noteworthy star system, but from what I know and love about Brandon Sanderson, I can't wait to read and find out. I have a feeling that whether for good or for evil, Taln Scar will play an important role in the Cosmere. I used atmospheric perspective to create believable snow and the indication of distance to these mountains. Simply said, atmospheric perspective is the way the eye perceives distance. As subjects get farther away, colors become less vibrant or less saturated, and objects become less detailed and more hazy. I incorporated the same concept when painting the clouds. Portraying storm clouds from above challenged me. It is easier to comprehend what storm clouds look like from below because we see them in everyday life. This results in a preconceived notion that storm clouds are very dark. However, since these clouds are viewed from above, the tops of the clouds are cast in moonlight. For this reason, they become one of the brightest areas of my painting. I focused on determining how bright the clouds should be and where to place the darker shadow areas. The clouds needed to be bright, but still provide an ominous feeling of a dangerous storm. Painting blue lightning showing through the cloud breaks helped invoke a darker mood. The lightning created such a wonderful effect and was so fun to paint, I started adding lightning in all areas throughout the clouds. Later, I will explain why this was not the right thing to do and how making some changes led to a better painting. This mountain is much closer to the viewer than the distant mountains, which allowed me to incorporate more details. The shadows are more pronounced, the mountain has more texture, and the highlights are slightly brighter. I explain more about the techniques I used on foreground mountains as we get further into the painting. Now for the city itself. My primary goal for painting the city was to be faithful to the proportions and descriptions of Urithiru in the books. Also, to give an indication of just how massive the city actually is. It is more than twice as tall as the Empire State Building and equally wide at its base. There are no lights on in the top 2 tiers of the city because the books tell us that the topmost sections of the city are mostly abandoned. I knew there needed to be a balance between adding enough detail to portray the intricacy of the city while keeping the design simple enough to paint. Painting the windows and columns differently on each tier of the city helped create this balance. Another important thing I paid attention to was what areas were in light and where to place shadows. The natural light of the moon created the main source of light in the painting. I relied heavily on the reference photo I took of my 3D mock-up of the city for the placement and values of light and shadows formed from the moonlight. I then used my knowledge of how shadows work to fill in any gaps of information. Although the darkest side of the city sits in the moon's shadow, it faces another natural light source, the red glow from Taln Scar. Painting a subtle red tint on top of the shadows helped simulate this glow. The last light source I needed to account for is the artificial light shining through the windows from inside the city. Since the tower is a good distance away from the viewer, any light or shadows caused from the window light would be very difficult to see. So to help simplify my painting process, I opted to leave out any cast light or shadows from the windows, and instead focused on creating the appearance of a glow shining out of each lit window. The most important factor to create the illusion of a bright glow is saturation, or how vibrant or grayed out a color is. In painting, this is done through color mixing. The more colors you mix together, the less saturated they become. The bright saturated yellows of the windows, next to the dull, unsaturated grays of the tower, is what causes the windows to look so bright. Just like atmospheric perspective caused the distant mountains to have less detail and appear less saturated, the opposite effect is implemented in these foreground mountains. You can see me apply this concept in a few different ways. The closer mountains and snow have more texture, which creates the illusion of greater detail, brighter, more saturated colors, and more visible areas of shadow. Since this is a nighttime scene, the atmospheric change is subtle and difficult to see unless you know it's there, but the application of atmospheric perspective is essential to create the illusion of distance and realism in a painting. The mountains also help frame the city and draw the viewer's eye into the painting, while simultaneously keeping them from straying out of the canvas. It's a neat composition trick that helps isolate a subject from the rest of the painting. While this cloud swirl and the lightning in the foreground both looked amazing, they drew attention away from the city and created too many focal points. Though it is sometimes difficult, I strive to remind myself that it's never too late to make a necessary change in a painting, especially if I believe it will produce a more pleasing composition and ultimately lead to a better painting. One of the first rules of composition I learned is that different focal points will compete with each other for attention. In general, I find it best to have one main focal point and maybe 2 or 3 supporting areas of interest that either help tell a story of a painting or help draw the viewer's eye to the focal point. In my case, the focal point is Urithiru, and my supporting areas of interest are Taln Scar and the distant lightning. If this video has inspired you to look into the Cosmere, Brandon Sanderson has written multiple fantasy novels that take place on different planets inside the Cosmere universe. The city of Urithiru is a location from his book series, The Stormlight Archive. It takes place on the planet of Roshar. As a landscape artist, when I read Brandon Sanderson's books, I envision the landscapes in my mind with such detail that I can almost believe the Cosmere is a real place. The world that Brandon created is epically vast. The settings are so beautifully written and are such an important part of the stories that I feel inspired to explore them thoroughly through my artwork. I simply have to get the images out of my mind and onto canvas. My husband and my oldest daughter are even bigger fans of Brandon Sanderson than I am. It has been amazing to be able to share my art with them, get their advice, and hear their excitement about my future paintings. My next few Cosmere paintings are all from the Stormlight Archive, and I've planned the setting and story I want to tell with each one. I have a vision for 2 different Pure Lake paintings. One at sunset, with a perfectly mirrored sky on the still water, and one during a high storm, where all the water has drained into the crevices and holes of the lake bottom. My painting of the Horneater Peaks will focus on the warm lakes, the plants in the settlements, and how they are surrounded by ice fields left by high storms. I also have an epic Shattered Plains painting planned that will have the high storm and the everstorm coming toward each other from opposite directions. They will collide in the middle, where Kaladin and Szeth will be fighting in the sky. After I complete these Stormlight paintings, I want to paint at least one scene from each standalone book and series, which includes Mistborn, Elantris, Warbreaker, and the Secret Projects. Right now, I don't have the specific scenes planned, but I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas of which scenes from the Cosmere I should paint next. Please share your ideas in the comments and let me know if you have any questions. If you enjoyed this video, please help me out by clicking the like button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.